For Poland Daily News, I'm Phil Goss. 77 years have passed since the pacification of the village of Wieliczka, located in what is now Ukraine, carried out by the 14th Waffen-SS Grenadier Division and the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. According to findings of historians from Poland's Institute of National Remembrance, about 900 Polish men, women, and children were murdered there in just one day. In order to honor these victims, a holy mass was performed on Sunday at a Polish Army field cathedral. Polish President Andrzej Duda wrote a letter commemorating the anniversary of the crime in Wieliczka.
I join your fervent prayer. I pay tribute to our compatriots who were murdered only because they were Poles. An independent Poland will never forget about the victims of the crime in Wieliczka or all the victims of genocide during the Wołyń massacre. On behalf of the Republic of Poland, I would like to express my great appreciation and sincerely thank the members of the Wieliczka Association for their tireless pleading for historical truth, for guarding national remembrance, and for their commitment to commemorate the martyrdom of Poles. A call to unite with God and other people has to be understood as the call to unite with other nations. Truth must be the foundation of this reunion. This is why we remember, pray, and ask God to help us remember, but not to hold a grudge. We have to remember about the duality of this crime. If we accuse only Ukrainians, we'll make Germans not responsible for it at all. If we don't see this Ukrainian aspect, we'll avoid the complicated and dramatic dimension of Polish-Ukrainian relations in this area. It was a horrible and mass-scale crime during which many vulnerable citizens were killed. All the residents of Wieliczka were murdered. The inscriptions on these crosses are compatible with the facts. The vandalism which happened 3 years ago was repaired by Ukraine. After this dramatic event, residents of neighboring villages took care of this place of memory. One of them brought a monstrance originally from the local church, which was burned down during the pacification.
Thousands have taken to the streets of Tbilisi, Georgia, to demand the release of opposition leader Nino Melia. His detention on Tuesday has the international community worried about the democratic backslide in the country. The detention also threatens to intensify a political crisis that led to the prime minister's resignation last week.
Waving red and white Georgian flags, protesters marched through the city center and gathered outside Parliament to protest Melia's detention and to call for fresh parliamentary elections after a contested vote in the country last year. The chairman of the United National Movement Party was arrested after police stormed the party's offices. Melia has been accused of inciting violence at street protests in June 2019, a charge he dismisses as politically motivated. The United States and other Western countries have voiced concern at Melia's detention and said it could harm the prospect of dialogue between the opposition and ruling parties.
This march is a march for freedom, and I think the world should pay a very close attention to what's happening in Georgia, because Georgia has been a strategic partner of the United States and Europe in this region, and if we lose our democracy, the West will lose the strategic partner in this very volatile region.
Opposition members worry that the ruling party, Georgian Dream, is controlled by the Kremlin and that a hostile takeover of the country is taking place behind the scenes.
Now, more than ever in the political history of Georgia, the Georgian people demand the assistance from our friends and partners in the West. We're once again saying that the vast majority of the Georgian people are for European integration, for NATO membership, for the US, but we need to feel their support here much more clearly, much more loudly, because right now what's at stake in Georgia is far more than just one election. Right now, what's at stake in Georgia is our democracy, our free statehood, and our stability in a very, very tense regional situation with all that has gone on in the region.
Georgian Dream won parliamentary elections in October of last year, but the opposition said the vote was rigged and marred with violations. Melia said at the time that his party did not recognize its outcome and called for a rerun.
The COVID-19 pandemic has left many with adverse health effects, lasting for months after the initial recovery. Some of the people suffering from long-term COVID are now reaching out for traditional therapeutic methods. A salt mine in southern Poland is a particularly popular destination for Poles hoping to breathe easily again.
The 13th century Wieliczka salt mine, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has long hosted a therapeutic center dealing with respiratory illnesses. Currently, most patients seeking its help suffer from long-term COVID. Joseph Biros, 58, caught COVID-19 in November and, like many other patients, he experienced numerous side effects even after recovering from the illness, such as fatigue or breathlessness. I've experienced ringing in my ears, anxiety, and low stamina. After I climb a flight of stairs, I lose my breath and feel stressed. Mr. Biros stated that his health had clearly improved since his stay in the mine. After 2 weeks of respiratory therapy in the mine, I can tell you that I am feeling better and better. Doctors say the microclimate in the mine, which stretches as far as 327 meters underground, helps people with pulmonary problems. We do the typical breathing exercises like blowing the feather, using a straw to suck up a cotton ball, various breathing techniques, but also stretching the chest or exercises that help increase lung capacity. Magdalena Koschon, a doctor working at the mine, explained that air reaches the underground rooms through a whole series of salt corridors and, thanks to this, it is cleaned of pollutants. The air comes here through numerous salt corridors and salt chambers, and thanks to this, it is cleaned of pollutants that are outdoors on the surface. It is saturated with saline aerosol, and it keeps very stable properties. Additionally, air ionization and favorable thermal and humid conditions foster the recovery of the respiratory system. Famous for its ornate underground chapels carved from salt, the mine is one of Poland's biggest tourist attractions, drawing around 1.8 million visitors in 2019. Its healing tradition reaches back to the 19th century when the first patients with respiratory illnesses arrived.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has signaled that the United States should not meddle in Mexico's domestic energy policy ahead of a meeting between the Mexican government and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The comment came after the Biden administration made it clear that it will expect more from Mexico in the global struggle against climate change.
The online meetings, dubbed a virtual visit by Washington, are expected to involve discussions on Mexico's energy strategy in the context of climate change, along with trade and security. López Obrador, an energy nationalist who has sought to renegotiate electricity and pipeline contracts with U.S. companies, said he hopes the U.S. will respect Mexico's electrical power management policies. They say we should act in a certain way. That's fine. Freedom of expression must be guaranteed, not only in one country. It's a universal policy. We must respect this matter of electric policy management. In seeking to use more domestic fuel, López Obrador has also limited the growth of foreign renewable energy operators in a move critics say affects Mexico's climate emissions obligations. We are free and sovereign. We are independent. We do not meddle in the affairs of the United States of America or the affairs of any nation in the world because we do not want anyone to decide about what corresponds to Mexicans. The Mexican president also remarked that the energy grid must be protected at all costs, citing the example of the recent power distribution breakdown in Texas during a winter storm.
For Poland Daily News, I'm Phil Goss. Good night.